We now shift our focus to the ICT sector, and to show us where the value lies, Peter Takaendesa, who is ICT Analyst at RMB Morgan Stanley. Hi there. Telkom, we just talked about it a moment ago to Sean in Cape Town, and he was saying there was a lot of noise around it. They had a couple of weeks, in fact, of bad publicity, blocked deals, not good results, evidence of declining market, and so on. But he said, ignore the noise. Long term, there may be value here. He didn't say necessarily there was, but you've got to look at it and find the value. What's your view on Telkom?
Yes, that's right. I don't think even that noise is ended. We're still probably going to see some more. If you remember well, the minister was tasked to come back to cabinet end of August with alternatives on Telkom. That's why I'm saying maybe that noise hasn't fully ended at this stage. There's still more to go. But definitely, if you look at the assets that Telkom has, the position that it still has in the market, that has definitely got to be valued at some stage. Probably things that are happening now, to some extent, are probably quite a very good wake-up call to the key stakeholders in Telkom to say something has to be done. Yeah.
Yeah, Peter, the one story that came out last week that I picked up on the headlines was nationalizing Telecom again, which I think is a crazy notion, but it was something that the journalists seem to have tabled. You know, what are the chances of something like that ever happening? I mean, would it go to that extreme in your view?
I think what brings up that idea is sort of the conflict that is there in Telkom between, you know, what the company needs to do and what the key stakeholder, which is the South African government, wants to do. Yeah, the objectives are not clearly aligned there. So one would think that maybe if the government really wants Telkom to pursue the social objectives that they have on the table, maybe they will have to consider something like that.
Peter, the point has been made that they can achieve all the social objectives they want. They can say, as the major shareholder, you must now do this. They can make rules and regulations that say you need to lay a minimum number of cables in rural areas, and that's the law. Just do it. They don't have to nationalise the company to do that. But it's in a sort of no man's land. They're such a big shareholder that no other shareholder can have influence, and yet they want to run it, but they can't.
I think that's the challenge, because once you talk about rolling out infrastructure into rural areas, that's more probably a social objective than a commercial objective. Then you have to talk about funding. You know, are the other private shareholders be interested in funding something like that that's not going to give them a return on investment? Such things are probably better done by the government through, you know, other
but to
means,
answer, what Ashraf's question is, you know, could this happen in the heat of the emotion, statist mood in the ANC? Let's do something. Telkom, let's renationalise.
Look, where we are now, anything is possible. It does look like anything is possible. We thought that KT was coming through quite nicely until the last minute, and they stopped that. Then one wonders what exactly is on the table. Maybe time will tell, but I think where we are now, again, I think anything is possible.
Just more broadly, are you more confused than before about ANC policy after its policy conference?
I'll give that one to Ashraf first.
Ashraf?
No, I think we just have to wait for Mangaung, because in my view, there was a fair bit of posturing that happened at this conference,
and maybe safety valve stuff.
And I think you know, people are getting the signals wrong, and you know, let's wait for the process to run its course, because you know, historically we've heard these noises about nationalization of mines, etc. But then once the process has run its course, you know, we are surprised that they say, well, really it's not a big issue. So I'm saying, let's allow the process to run its course, and you know, people were just really putting their views on the table, and it's got to be debated.
So as Sean said a moment ago, let's just keep the noise out and try and focus on what's underneath it. In times like this, we've talked a lot about some sectors, and I don't think we really talked about the ICT sector being vulnerable or not to what's happening in Europe and so on. Where do these big companies, the Vodacoms and MTNs, where do they stand? What are they looking at the moment, given the global situation?
Now, look, for them, they are not really that exposed to those regions. It's much more Africa in general for all of them. The key focus for them at this stage is growing data revenues. That's the area that is growing. Of course, developments that side will have an impact on the consumer wherever you are. We are all linked together through the global economy. So obviously that will sort of come to the attention also at some stage. But at this stage, to me, it looks like the clear focus is two key things: data revenues and network capacity. Investments into networks, avoiding congestion. Yeah.
Sure.
Just to go back to Telkom, I mean, my understanding of Telkom is that their cash flow generation remains relatively strong. So they're still sitting with excess cash flow ahead of capex. And, is it not a case of some of that cash flow just being earmarked for those social projects going forward into perpetuity? Would that not be a solution that they would look at?
Yeah, look, that's again very difficult, because what that will mean is, to some extent, I don't think that will be enough by itself for them to do so. They will probably at some stage actually need to come to the market, maybe not equity market, but debt markets, just to try to raise cash to run on an ongoing basis. But again, if you are to do so, then it's clearly maybe not the right platform to be doing so. Look, the government has other avenues. They've got some other government-funded companies that are doing the same things that Telkom is doing. So it's probably a matter of consolidating those if they really want to do something.
Well, that's the one view I have. The other question I have to ask is, the MTN and Vodacom, as well as Cell C to some extent, have been quite aggressive in their rollouts. And they speak about extensive coverage throughout South Africa. Do they not have sufficient coverage to cover those rural areas by now?
Look, there are still gaps, because let's go back to the basics of the telecoms market. There are applications that you definitely need a fixed line. For example, or most of your corporate applications, you definitely need a fixed line. Then the consumer in general, because of the usage is quite light, a mobile offering will still do. But I don't think that the coverage, even for the mobile operators, is really fully penetrated the rural markets.
Peter, the Black Economic Empowerment component, there's an ICT charter which has been in the pipeline for many years, it seems. That's like.
Right, yeah.
And I've just picked up something from a guy called Keith Levenstein, who's CEO of Econo BEE. It's an empowerment company. He goes for this ICT charter. He says it's a cut and paste job where they've got the old one, they've cut and paste and put a few new numbers in, which then have knock-on effects where the old numbers are still present. And he says in a press release he's put out, he says they perpetuate many errors in the codes without making any effort to explain them. We could live with the original codes having errors, but we can't accept that there are still the problems 5 years after the first code was in. And he says he can't believe that a minister of Rob Davies' intelligence could have put his signature on a document like this, and it's totally incompetent. I mean, this is strong stuff from a player in the field.
Yeah, that's right. This has been going on for quite a long time. Luckily, I think as an investor, I would probably approach this question that way. There are a number of companies that have already sort of moved to comply with the requirements of the existing codes. So I think the fact that he's saying it hasn't changed much will probably be a good sign to investors, because that's not a shock to the system. Yeah. So I would probably take it that way, that it's probably a good development that they've kept most of those things. One of the things that has delayed the sector, as far as I understand, is opposition from a number of global companies that are operating in South Africa, saying we can't really comply with the 25–30% black economic sort of share ownership, if you want to put it that way. Find alternative means for us to comply through training staff and all this. So yeah, we're getting probably closer now to finalization of that. But luckily, a number of companies are already in compliance with the requirements.